I mean, it's been raining
I
here,
Go on.
and I worked out this morning, and it was cold, and I
Mm.
was not wearing F3 socks, and,
Oh, you
pretty
weren't
sure
wearing
the
cotton, were you?
the frostbite was so bad, I think,
You lost some toes.
I think I
I am
lost
2
a
toes
toe.
less.
But if I woulda had those F3 socks on, I
Yeah,
know.
F3 socks are not guaranteed to prevent frostbite.
I
Yeah, a lot of guys, it's funny, a lot of guys have been giving me a lot of crap, as you might imagine, about the socks and the whole sock thing and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
yeah,
look, they're like, do you really love the socks that much? And I'm like, do I love the socks that much that I would talk about them every single podcast if Mudgear was not the official sock of F3 and they were, kind of a sponsor of the situation? Like, would I talk about them every week if that was not the case? Probably not,
mhm,
because I get that not everybody wants to hear about the socks. Here's the thing, and this I think is useful for you in your daily lives, Pack. So listen up. When you start down a road, right, of life, and you're thinking to yourself, where do I want to end up? You must begin with the end in mind.
mm,
Right? That's a Coveyism. That's not new, nothing
yeah,
revolutionary there, right? So you must begin, if you want to be effective, you got to begin with the end in mind. Otherwise, you're always reacting to whatever comes at you rather than knowing what to say no to so that it can get you to your goal. If you've not been intentional, and we remember what we talked about a few weeks ago about
yeah.
intentionality, right? Having
Deliberate
purpose in,
action
yeah,
toward a
exactly.
justified ends, right?
There you go, right? So if you're not taking deliberate action, if you're not being intentional about the care of your feet, then it doesn't really matter what socks you put on. If you don't care about them, if that's not interesting to you, if you think to yourself, my feet will probably be fine, right? Blisters, no, whatever, walk it off. If
Mm,
that's how you want to live your life, go for it. I'm not your dad. I'm not your mom. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you this. If you're going to start with the end in mind, and you say to yourself, at the end of this long, horrifying ruck that I'm about to do, right? Or at the end of this long seesaw or beatdown or whatever it is I'm about to do, it would be really nice to kick my feet up and not have them full of blisters and not have them, whatever, right? If that is what you think in your mind as one of the things that you intentionally want to accomplish when you go and do something hard, dirty, dangerous, or difficult, then by golly, you probably owe it to yourself to put on a Mudgear sock. That's all
yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah,
It's a leadership principle for your feet.
right, yeah. Well, and I would love to be able to spend more days, kicking up my feet after a workout because life's too short to wear crappy socks.
Bingo.
If you're going to be a winner, you're going to need a coach.
Sharpening doesn't happen by accident. A blade left untouched will rust, and a man left unchallenged will stagnate. Every man needs friction, resistance, and a whetstone to grind away weakness and reveal his true edge. Welcome to the Whetstone, where we reject comfort, disrupt the status quo, and forge men ready for impact. Hosted by Dredd, Dark Helmet, and me, The Plague. This is where men step out of the drift and into acceleration, because iron sharpens iron, and no man sharpens alone. Yeah.
And we're
We're
back.
back. Oh, I love it. Well, we missed you
Uh,
last week.
I know. I was traveling to hymn camp, and hymn camp. Although we did have some discussion there at the camp that the word hymn is maybe a little overused.
Yeah.
Like we kind of toss it around like when we should just be saying packs.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that guy's a real him. Actually, he's kind of a loser. Like, kind of a douche. Like, whatever. Right? Maybe he's
He's a
not a real
pack.
him.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure he's having a high impact. Like maybe he's a limb. He might be a limb, right? A low impact man. We don't know, right? So I think we tossed it around a little too much. But this was hymn camp. It was designed to be kind of I mean, to be honest, it was just a weekend to spend. A lot of third F packed in there, but just a ton of second F. A little bit of first F sprinkled in, but it was really just designed to sort of get us out in nature, walk us around a little bit, work out a little bit and that kind of thing. But mostly just be big, dumb animals out in the wilderness. And it was delightful.
Nice.
It was a really good time. We slaughtered a beast, which was delicious. Animals that they have right there on property, and it's a farm up in Virginia, and so they slaughtered a beast. We ate it on Saturday night. We worked out. They have an obstacle course that they built up there. We participated in our Second Amendment rights quite a bit, which was delightful. And we just had a lot of great discussion. A lot of great discussion. And just, getting to know guys. Some guys, it was interesting because I know this may be not true of everybody, right? But I'm a pretty get to know everybody kind of guy, right?
Mhm.
So I have a pretty good idea who most guys are, and I know them, and I learn about their lives. It's just something I don't mean to do it even. I just sort of accidentally ask a lot of questions and find out
Yeah.
about people's lives. But it was good to see guys who did not know each other, right? Who don't recommend or kind of run into each other on a regular basis and that kind of thing. To have them connect, to hear some deep things, from some of those guys, and then to say, hey, that's a guy who I didn't know had some of those insecurities,
Yeah.
or some of those dark things. And that's a guy that I feel like I want to lean into and really kind of pay a better attention to, who I didn't really even know that I liked all that much because I thought he was kind of annoying. And now I understand why. And now it's endearing, and I want to make it something that I help him with so he feels safe, so he doesn't have to act like that, so he can be a more effective leader. That was kind of exciting. That was the best part of the weekend, probably. Well,
That's super
outside
cool.
of my Blade Deep Dish, who has literally the fastest trigger finger I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anything like it. It sounded like a fully automatic weapon.
Oh,
It was
wow.
insane. Yeah, I'm like, I don't even know how he did it. Yeah, it was crazy, but it was hilarious fun to watch him unload, a very large round clip, like of bullets. Like it was nuts. Anyway, so we had a really good time. But yes, unfortunately, I was driving in the mountains and was unable to join you for the podcast.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. We, cause there's a dad camp too, right? There's
a dad camp that happens nearby here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of every year, to my knowledge anyway. I think they did it this year. My kids have been too old and too female to be interested in that for a while.
Yeah.
So I haven't gone in many years, but when they did go, and when I was aware of it and paying attention to it, they have it pretty much every year, I think, and it's quite a good time. So it's a big YMCA camp. There's all kinds of stuff to do. So
I love it. We do what we call an high impact retreat.
So the retreat is high impact, not necessarily the men that attend.
Right. Yeah. It was funny.
They could be MIMs. They could be mediocre impact men.
Right. Right. Well, we had somebody was announcing it. It happens in January, right? So we were at a workout, and somebody's announcing it, and high impact retreat, and they go, it's a high impact retreat, and it's pretty impactful. That's sort of the selling point.
The impact is slightly above average.
Yeah, no, it's really more third F focus, but we sprinkle in some workouts, and I would agree. When you have time set aside to learn more about guys and sort of their story and what's behind the guy that maybe you see in the gloom, it does add a ton of just flavor to the relationship, and you get to know the layers. So I think that's really cool. I get to lead one of the groups this year at the Impact Retreat, so I'm super.
What are you leading?
Well, so essentially there's a series. It's based off of a retreat that one of the local schools does and sends their seniors to this retreat. And so there's a series of talks. There's
do a panty raid at the girls' camp or something like that?
Yeah,
what are you doing?
No, I mean, it's all men, but so there's a couple different sessions, and then you kind of go back to your small group and just kind of have more discussion. And then probably my favorite is it's like an
private
hour.
High school?
What's that?
Is this a private high school?
It's a private all boys high school.
All right. Continue that. That makes more sense now. I was like, well, sure.
So it's kind of out in the woods. And one of the things that we do is there's sort of like a meditation, third F time. And then afterwards no phone, no contact with anybody else, and just go kind of walk around with a journal or whatever. And to me, there's, I don't know, something about being in creation, being in sort of that right headspace. It was just, it's one of those things that I could probably do all the time, but with,
I just don't. Like when,
I'm not sure
you
why
don't prioritize it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the most recent episode, right, we put out there sort of about agency and accountability, right, was just Dredd and I, and we were really talking about. I think I was so excited that I had just gotten this new position, and so talking a lot about like.
Congratulations, by the way. I didn't
Thank you.
properly get a chance to say that.
I'm
'cause I
so
wasn't
glad
here.
you were wrong with your prophecy there, but it did put me in, I think, a good mindset for the interview process,
Which is really what we were trying to get done, right, Plague?
that's right. Yeah. But I think our conversation last week was maybe more focused on sort of like team leadership, maybe even more in the work environment,
Mhm.
but something that you had mentioned maybe a few episodes ago, just sort of the family, right? So like if we really want to impact communities through F3, we've really got to be better at bringing some of this stuff from F3 into our families. And I know we've kind of talked through that a little bit, but I don't know, would love to just kind of talk through that with you. One of the things that's on my heart as I get a new role with more responsibilities and more sort of stuff to do, the temptation, right, is to like work later, work harder, and let that work relationship sort of creep in to some of those concentric of things. So I don't know, like things like, when you think about like even like the team model, right? Trust, equip, accountability, mission, some of that stuff, or even like individual initiative. How do we apply that to? I don't know if it's the whole concentrica or if it's to our.
Well, it doesn't apply. It doesn't apply. It only works at workouts, and you should only think of it.
I was going to be heartbroken.
Wait a minute, what?
Yeah,
I thought there was.
How can that be the answer? But yeah, look, I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
No, that's a good question, and it's one that I think it's funny that you bring it up because, well, number one of the things that I was tasked with when I was in Virginia was I was supposed to teach Q school, right? But rather than sort of take it from this same old, I'm like, look, if you want to learn how to learn a workout, go learn that in your local area. Because me teaching you is good, that's fine, and I can do that. And we talked about the commands and the specific commands that one should give and all that kind of stuff. But what we did instead is I said, look, you dial back and go, okay, well, but why do we do it that way? And if we know why we do a thing, then we can apply it to other areas of our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about cueing workouts, but I said, if we define Q in F3 as a man responsible for the outcome of a thing, right, then it only makes sense that you being responsible for the outcome of your life are kind of the Q of your life, right? So would you go to a workout with no preparation whatsoever? Sure, maybe. I mean, you can, right? But even the guys who say they have no preparation, I'm like, well, how many workouts have you queued before you got here? Dozens? Okay. Yeah. Then you've made some preparation, like, okay, maybe you didn't write out a full Winky, right? Which I don't do that all the time anymore. Or maybe you didn't do a full geographic survey of the surrounding area before you got there. I've screwed that up, right? Many times when I'm going, especially if I'm going down range to a place. I'm like, well, I looked at Google Earth and it says from this point to this point is this far, but it did not mention that it is a straight up a hill, right? Or whatever. So, so you may not do any real prep, or you might do some sort of that, kind of preliminary prep, but you've done prep. Right. So would you show up to a workout trying to lead 50 men and have it be your VQ and try and like really, how do you expect that to go? How's that going to go?
Right.
Right. Is it going to go as well as if you had prepared better? Like you had no prep, like you did nothing. Well, I've done nothing. This is my third, F3 workout. I get the idea. Like you would never do that to somebody. Right.
Right.
So we talked a little bit about kind of, how you show up and the things that you do for an F3 workout, and how do you take those and kind of, place them over in your life in different areas. Right. So it was interesting to do that. And your question of, and I think what I hear you saying, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think part of what I hear you saying is that, kind of, does this end at the workout? And if not, then what are we really supposed to take home?
Right.
Is that a fair?
Yeah. And even just like the example of like preparedness, or even, like language is one, I think, as we've been unpacking language here. I've noticed like, I don't know. I'm paying more attention to the words we used and sort of this. It's interesting how many words we use that we don't really know what they mean, or we haven't talked about what they mean.
We may
right?
know what they mean, or we know what we may mean by them.
Right.
Right. But if we haven't agreed on the meaning,
Right.
that's the big problem, right? If we don't agree on what the meaning is, then is that word even useful?
Right. Yeah. Probably not. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you made a good point, right? So like in a family sense, so like if you took that principle of language and applied it to your family, right? There's probably words and things that you say or things that you do that if I walked in and you were trying to get me to do the thing by using the language that you use with your kids, I would just look at you and be like, I don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even down to what you call certain rooms of your house, perhaps.
Right.
Right. Or, certain activities that you do, or, whatever. Like even down to like, our youngest, well, actually, I guess it was our oldest at the time. I can't remember which kid now. I'm very old. But are you familiar with the store Hobby Lobby?
Yeah. Yeah. We have those.
Right. So one of my kids, I think it was the oldest actually, when she was real little, called it Hoggy Woggy. That's what she called it. Right. And so we have always called it that. Right. And then it took on a little bit different meaning at different times when it was like kind of any large box store, kind of, depending on what it sold or what it did, like kind of became the Hoggy Woggy. Like,
awesome.
And you would know like which store I was actually going to based on what I said I was going to buy when I got there,
right.
But they were all kind of Hoggy Woggy, like whatever.
Yeah.
So if I said that, if you walk in and you hear me say that, my kids know exactly what we're doing. My wife knows exactly where I'm going and what I'm doing. You'd look at me like I was, had 6 heads, right? I mean, it's bananas. Right. So, things like that, where some of that language develops over time, but some of it's very intentional, right? Now, I don't want to belabor language in case you want to move on to something else, but I'll give you another example. And that is, and guys have heard me tell this, I think before, maybe I don't remember if on a podcast or not, but certainly in certain meetings and stuff. But like, if you were to ask Scratch and Win right now, and you told him, if you were to tell him rather and say, hey, Helmet went into business mode the other week on a meeting. Like, now you can get an idea of what that means, but if you haven't seen it and experienced it, it's very off-putting. Like I've upset a lot of men, right? And unwittingly, just not even thinking about it. And I used to upset my kids, right? So when we would go to a place where high stress, limited visibility, right? And for me, it's crowds especially when our kids were really little, big crowds. So we go to the airport or amusement park or something like that. I mean, I go into like hyper protective, accomplish the thing. I get a little bit narrow. I'm looking here. I don't have time. I'm not worried about. So I have very specific instructions and things that you have to do. So we would go to the airport, like to travel to, go see grandma or whatever. And as soon as we hit those doors in the Charlotte Douglas, baby, it was on. And I was like, move this, carry this, give me that, do that, go this way, go, whatever. And I'm just trying to get us to the gate with nobody getting lost, nobody getting hurt, nobody having a meltdown, whatever. I'm carrying 85 things because I don't want to have to, whatever. Right. So it's and I realized that the kids started to associate that when we travel, Dad gets mad. And I realized that like there was all this consternation when we get to the gate, everybody felt tense, and I would just be like, why is everybody mad? Like, what's everybody upset about? Why are we, like, what's happening over here? And what I didn't recognize at the time was I would turn into this, very just. So if you take a DISC assessment, you're familiar with the DISC assessment?
Yeah.
So I'm a high D, high I. There's almost no, there's a fair amount of S in my natural state, and there's no C anywhere. Like, you can't find it. And then under pressure, my D goes through the roof and my I goes through the roof. So I talk a lot and I get very directive, right? So, and my S goes in the toilet. I don't care how you feel, right? So if I'm very, very busy or there's a lot going on, I have terrible ADHD, right? I mean, it's the worst. And so if there's a lot going on, man, I really have to get laser focused and really, business mode is what we started calling it.
Business mode. I like it.
So like on a meeting, in fact, this just happened a couple weeks ago. We were having a marketing meeting with a couple SLT members, some guys helping us with marketing, stuff like that. And I was listening to what they were saying, and I was like, okay, time out. Scratch can explain this to you at a different time because I'm not even going to take the time to explain it to you. But we've now entered business mode, and I'm about to, like, it's going to feel horrible. You're going to think I'm yelling at you. I'm not. I promise I'm not. It's just that I have like 85 other things, and I need this done. And I don't have time to sit and be nice about it and talk about it and make sure everyone's feelings are okay. And and a couple guys got off that call, and they were like, whoa, that was not okay, you know? And Scratch, thankfully, because he's a good friend and a really good, member of the SLT, like he's like a good part of shared leadership. He just said, hey man, like, don't sweat it. And then I text all those guys later and said, hey guys, don't sweat it. Nobody's mad. I'm not mad. I just needed to get through that because I had other things I had to get onto, and we were spinning our wheels, and there were things I didn't like that had not happened and things that were supposed to happen, whatever. Right. So I had to start, and I had to tell them ahead of time. Now, some guys were okay, especially once they had it explained to them. Right. So I had to sit down with my kids and go, kids, here's a piece of language that I need you to understand. And I've realized that I do this now. And so, but I need you to understand that I'm not mad at anybody.
Right.
When this happens, when we go to the airport, Dad is super concerned about your safety, right? I get very worried about it. It's a big crowd. It happens at any crowded situation. Like when we go to football games, it doesn't matter what we're doing. If there's a lot of people, I don't do well. Yeah. I get very locked in, and because there's just a lot of potential for things to go wrong. Yeah. I attribute it back to the fact that I think my parents lost me 2 or 3 times when I was like, and like traumatic or something. I'm sure it's in there somewhere, right? PTSD, I remember, right? Yeah, right, exactly, something like it, So I don't know exactly all the reasons, but that I do. I get reluctant, so I had to tell him and explain it to him and go, so here's what we're going to do from now on. I will just tell you, hey guys, headed to the airport later this afternoon. And you know what that means? Dad's probably going to head to business mode. I'm going to do my best to dial it back, knowing that I'm going to do it. But if it pops out accidentally, will you give me a little grace and just kind of go along with me and just help me out? And they'd be like, yeah, no problem. Right. Yeah. And eventually it got to a point where they got a little older and could handle their stuff a little bit better. And also I had said it enough times that I knew that they knew that I had impressed upon them that situation was a place that does not play around. Right. We just get the stuff done. And when we get to the gate, we can do whatever we want. Right. Yeah. But on the way to the gate, through security, all that kind of crap, man, we are dialed in. Because the last thing Dad needs to do is fight with a TSA agent and then get locked away. We don't want that. Right. Yeah. If they start giving the 9-year-old hassle, not going to go, go bad. Right. Yeah. So they knew, like, hey, that's business mode, right? Language takes a big concept and dialed it right into a very easy to understand concept, right? That they knew and said, oh, I got it. As soon as I said 2 words, they knew exactly what was going to happen. They knew exactly what their role was. They knew exactly all those things, right? Now, Dredd would have much better examples because that's the military all the way around. Right. Yeah. Some sort of acronym or some sort of thing that they would call it. And, and everybody knew, like, oh, okay, that's this formation, that's this thing, or you do these tasks to, whatever. Right. But that's my modern day, suburban dad example. Right.
Well, yeah, I love it. I think there's just, at least for me, like, there's all sorts of opportunities to just, and maybe it's not even you defining it, right? Just like having that conversation of like, what is, what do we call this, or what does this mean? Right.
Get them to tell you. Sure.
I know with, one of the funny things, we did a values exercise, right? So I did mine and my wife did hers, and then we were sort of like, oh, that's interesting. They're not the same. And then trying to go through and define, like, well, what are our family values, or what's our family mission, kind of thing. And lots of opportunity to define what words mean, and I think it's interesting because now our 10-year-old is sort of like got all this 10-year-old knowledge, and she's sort of weighing in with, like, I don't think that's what that means. And then our 3-year-old is sort of like, what are you guys talking about? So,
whatever.
Hoggy woggy. But yeah, I know I love it. I would be curious, like, what are some of the other sort of things within F3 that you feel like you've been able to maybe bring back to your family in an impactful way?
Well, and that's the thing, right? So that's why I grabbed Q Source. Like, literally, Plague, we could go to every single point easily and say, okay, here's what this means to me in this, in a family context or in a work context or whatever. That's the thing. I think the guys think that like this is a fun thing to study and have like intellectually in their mind, or it certainly applies to F3, where it's like, oh, well, if we were going to start a new workout, or if we're going to study leadership together, we want to do these things or whatever. And I'm like, yes, but if you leave it at an intellectual exercise, then you really haven't accomplished it. Like we haven't invigorated male community leadership.
Yeah.
We've intellectually male community leadership. And I'm not sure that's what we're trying to get done. Right.
Yeah.
So, look, there's 50 of these things 50 of them. The quadrants, pick a number.
Yeah.
Pick a number between 1 and 4.
2.7.
All right. 2.7. Targeting. Right. So that's part of the impact acronym, right? Impact is forcible contact to strong effect. You familiar with that?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So that means it had to be dynamic. Man, right? It was exactly right. Or low impact, mediocre impact. So this is second quadrant stuff, right? And impact stands for influence, missionality, positive habit transfer. The A is accountability. Yep. C, I'm trying not to look. C, I'm going to have to look. Oh, correction, and then targeting, right? So those are the things that you would do within that. So T, targeting, initiating, missionality, and others. So essentially that means picking a guy, right? So let's just go there, right? And you go, okay, I have now targeted the next leader, right? And so if missionality is an essential virtue, then let's see here. Moves a man beyond himself. Yeah. So this is kind of, I think if I understand this right, from reading this a million years ago and going over it 1,000 times with Dredd, right? This is it's sort of like you have identified the next leader, right? The next generation of leader, or you're trying to get the next people to be missionalized. And to kind of come alongside, right? So, man, it's easy in an F3 context to see and go, oh yeah, if I'm going to identify and train my next, the site Q who's going to come in after me, easy, right? Well, I have to look at my kids and go, okay, the way that we said it in our family was our job is to raise girls, because that's all we had, to be good decision makers, right? To understand certain, things about themselves and about their relationship to God. These are the things that we believe that we're going to help them be on mission, that we're going to help them to be the leaders that we think they're going to be called to be, right? So, if you were to read through and pick on some of these things, right? We usually think of a targeted man moves in relational rhythm. We usually think of rhythm in relation to musical beat and tempo. Rhythm is critical to music. A guitarist may accurately play each individual note in a song, but without rhythm, it won't sound right. If far enough out of rhythm, it might not even sound like music at all, but rather a discordant jumbling of disconnected sounds. Rhythm is also important to other physical endeavors like the golf swing. And then he describes that. If any one of the components of a golf swing is misperformed, then the outcome will be negative. And let's see, practicing law taught him about rhythm, and he talks about different other things in here, about playing golf and lawyering, right? But then what it comes around to is not surprisingly, this meant that my relationships within my concentrica were in constant disarray. He was talking about when he was when his boat was capsized, right? Lacking inner peace, I was an undependable and selfish husband. Although my children were too young to realize it, I was a distant and capricious father. Although I had a few acquaintances, no man could call me a true friend, right? So, okay, how does that relate to you and your kids? Some of that's pretty obvious, right?
Yep.
But being in the best thing you can do for your kids, be in proper missional relationship with their mother.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, what does that look like? And building everything backwards. I talked about that this morning with a Blade, and he was saying like, well, how do you, because he just took on a site Q duties at the place we worked out this morning. And he was like, well, how, what is it? What do I do as a site Q? And he had been taught by the site Q before him, and he had notes, a lot of really good stuff. And I was like, I love all that. but with the end in mind, what am I thinking of that I want, if I imagined advantage for these men, and let's say, 18 months from now, you're getting ready to hand this off to somebody else. What does it look like? Paint me the picture, right? And then let's back the steps in, and that's kind of that's the process all the time. Right. And so, like I said, like you said, you could pick anything in here. You could pick, doesn't even matter whether it's counting. I mean, in here, there's no instruction on counting or anything like that. Right. So because this is less about the workout and more about the virtuous leadership, but you could easily pick anything within the workout, with cueing a workout, with, having the specific commands in the order that they are in, the fact that you give a preparatory command before you give the command of execution, right? There's all kinds of wonderful application in there to your family and to, because when the time came, Plague, like we had done this with our kids, right? Hey guys, gonna need you to clean your room, right? Starting position, move.
Yeah.
And if you taught them from the time they were really little, like, hey, it's a game, or hey, it's a task we perform. We do it this way, and it's always the same. A kid doesn't mind cleaning up their room. We had the toughest time getting our daughters to work on this until we went in and actually did what's in Q Source, and it was like, oh, okay, I have a vision that I need to tell them. Guys, think about, here's these things. I know that when I'm in a clean environment, studies show, whatever the things are, doesn't matter. However you paint a vision of what a clean room would be good for. And I articulate that very clearly to them, and they understand it. They don't have to like it, right? That's the articulation. You don't need to like it. I just need to understand it. So they understand it. And then the persuasion, when that comes in, and the exhortation, essentially, you had to go through the LDP, which is what, number 4 in those first 4 foundational principles. Yeah. Right? You had to say, okay, I've now schooled you in what it would take. I show you these things go here, these things go here. Drawers are shut. They don't look like they vomited, right? Shoes are lined up. They're paired up. They sit in the, it doesn't have to be crazy,
Girls are messy, right?
Well, oldest was not. Oldest was like, you could eat off her floor.
That's how our oldest,
horrifying.
Yeah.
Horrifying. And then, like, if you average the 2 youngest, somewhere, right? Youngest also has the largest room. She has the most crap because she inherited it from them, right. And it's just like my kingdom. And she feels free to spread it, because she's like, well, I've got 2 other empty rooms now. I have no sisters in these rooms. Right. I will, and you're like, maybe not. Right? How it works. So, yeah. But if you schooled them, right, and then you apprenticed them, right? I showed one, right? Then we did one together. And then I gave you the opportunity to do it by yourself, and then pointed out where, hey, this was really good. You did a great job. And here's some things that didn't meet the standard, or that weren't part of that original vision that we talked about of what clean room looks like. Shoved under the bed doesn't count, right? Shoved into the closet doesn't count. That's just the appearance, whatever. So however you paint that vision of what it's supposed to look like, that's just a clean room. You can break this stuff down into everything. Now, some people will go, that's annoying.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you should have to do that. In fact, I don't think you should tell kids what to do so much. Like, they're fine. They'll figure it out. Okay. You do it your way. And when my kid hires your kid and has to fire him because they never learned how to do anything, right? Because they're an idiot. Like, don't come crying to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting where that shows up in the workplace. You made a comment there though, and I wonder if we could dive in a little bit more, sort of, like, I'm going to articulate the vision. They don't have to like it, but so sort of this idea of like alignment, not necessarily agreement. And that kind of feels like what we've been talking about with Minivan Centurion, right? Sort of like a, unity in the essentials kind of thing, or how do you foster that alignment even when maybe others don't agree? And I guess this maybe applies to family or work, but
yeah, you pick, doesn't matter, right? So in the A of VAPE, right, the articulation side of things, it's not important at this point that you like it. It's not important that you agree with it. It's just that you understand clearly what it is that I'm trying to get done, or what it is that I want you to do, right? Or what the vision of what we're all trying to accomplish together is. Yep. That's all that is critical there. to get you to like it or to, participate in it is in the P. It's in the persuasion part, right?
Yeah.
And that's really
Okay.
helping you understand how that applies to you. Why does it matter to you? What's in it for you? Right? And then getting you to, and I hate the term, but people use it a lot, right? I like alignment or something like that, but they say like, I got to get your buy-in.
Yeah.
Right? Well, first of all, I ain't selling anything. I'm telling you some stuff. It's different.
Right.
And plus, nobody likes to be sold because then you always feel like you got hoodwinked, right? Like you tricked me into this, or you manipulated me or whatever, right? So I'm not a huge fan of that term. But essentially to say like, hey, you understand how this benefits you. And therefore you have invested your own time, energy, and whatever into accomplishing this thing. Right. So I think that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say like, they don't have to like it at that point. They just have to understand what it is I'm telling them. They may never like it. If I have the institutional authority, that's really not even important. But if it's going to be effective, it should be, right? But in my family, I must not. It would be inappropriate and I think abusive, or headed that way, for me to use my institutional authority as the dad, as the reason for doing a thing.
Sort of the because I said so, right? Kind of, or because,
Now, because I said so sometimes is like, look, I don't have time to explain it to you.
Yeah.
So you go, like, it's too urgent. I'm not going to sit
Maybe
here and
if you're in
the
business mode, there's a few,
right.
because I said so.
I would say that, that's okay. But when you're talking about, big stuff, right? Big picture kind of stuff. Like it's not okay. And even like clean the room. Like we never, and my daughter's room reflected it, right? We didn't go in there and I didn't like say, well, anything that's on the floor is getting thrown out. I would not use the fact that I own the house, or that I paid for the things. I just hate that. I just think that's super inappropriate to be like, well, whose house do you think this is?
Yeah.
It's her house, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have definitely said anything left on the table is getting thrown away, but I did.
I'm not saying, look, every family's different, right?
Yeah.
And I will also say boys are different than girls. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just telling you from my perspective in our family, I feel like that anytime that you're using the limiting of liberty as your default, like situationally, sometimes all bets are off. Right?
Yeah.
If the bus is coming and it's going to hit you, I'm not going to, like I say, I've never yelled at my kids. They've also never stood in front of a moving bus.
Right. Yeah.
I've never hit my kids or jerked my kid's arm.
Well,
but if they were standing in front of a moving bus,
and some of what I'm thinking of as we're talking through this, right, is I've also not been very effective trying to apply VAPE to my parenting, right, which does require you to, like, if you're going to articulate a vision to a 10-year-old or a 3-year-old, right, that's tough, but still necessary, right? And so then I think there's, but like kind of what we're talking about, right, is like the only way that's going to work is if I try it, right? And if I begin applying these things at home and, experiencing what happens.
And I think
there.
To your point, an age appropriate vision, right? So telling my 3-year-old, well, there's cortisol that gets released when you're in a clean environment, son. And that's a really,
right.
Maybe not the vision, maybe not the way to,
right.
or the persuasion that they need. Right. But if what you have taught them and try to get them to understand is, hey, will you trust dad?
Yeah.
And if I have you understand that trusting dad is part of this deal, then can I ask you to trust me that cleaning your room is an important thing? Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Well, then let's keep dialing it back. You say unity in the essentials. Well, let's keep trying to figure what is that essential thing then? Okay.
Yeah.
What is the essential thing? And if the essential thing ends up being, well, you have to do it because I'm going to punish you if you don't, that's when I think you get in a problem. Right. That's when I think you get in a problem.
Yeah. Which sort of on the flip side also applies, thinking about the workplace, right. And sort of taking time to understand, if you're trying to persuade somebody and they keep coming back with, I can't commit to that or whatever, then it's, are you continuing to like ask those questions? I love how you worded that. Like, okay, well, could we, what if we go try this approach? Because I think even in the workplace, you sort of hear like some leaders will say, this is the way it is, right? If you can't commit, there's a corrective action or something.
Everything is, situational. And if someone's toxic, that's different, in a family than a workplace than even an F3 workout.
Right. Yep.
My kid isn't there voluntarily, but kind of, like they're kind of there involuntarily because they were just born here, right? But I'm not trying to get them to do things. I'm trying to be a place where they learn things.
Yeah.
There's nothing in this house. It's funny because, again, I was just telling somebody this right before this, like, guys are like, man, the way you act in F3 sometimes, like, man, your kids must be. And I'm like, nah, dude, I act so different than my kids because it's a very different kind of leadership in my home. Girls, we've established that, but also that is very different than F3, which is very, very different from even my workplace. And remember, a few weeks ago when we talked about Black Diamond leadership, right? It's kind of knowing when and how to apply those things to those situations, to those sets of people and all that kind of stuff as to whether or not you're going to be effective or not. Because what do we say all the time? Like, if you get out of management and get to leadership, there's only a couple kinds of leaders, right? There's ineffective and effective. There's virtuous and non-virtuous. And then what we're trying to go for is, having the skills of leadership and being very effective, and also having the virtues of leadership so that we can be virtuous leaders, having both things, put together. That's a real high impact man.
Yeah.
Not just because we said so, because we went to him camp, right?
Right. But no, I love it. I think it's so good and it makes so much sense. I think one of the things I notice, and we were kind of talking about this, at the beginning, before we started recording, but just like there's so many, and call it the splitter or the jester or whatever, right? Maybe just the way we're wired, but there's, we get to these moments where we likely know what to do, right? Maybe we even have a really clear mission, but then for whatever reason, something creeps in to sort of send that, like, you're not enough sort of message. And then for me, it's like, I'll go to like, okay, well, if I find the perfect leadership book that tells me how to do this thing, or the perfect parenting book or marriage book or whatever, I don't know why knowledge sort of is an idol that I'm trying to work through. But
well, is it an idol? Okay, then if you've picked up that stick, if you picked up the knowledge stick, right, on one end is idol, what's on the other end?
Everything else. I don't know.
Okay. Yes, I guess, right? No. So if making it an idol is a problem, if knowledge is part of who you are, right? If making it an idol is a problem, that's the same with any character trait. Yeah. I can make anything an idol if I want to. But on the other end of that is guy who does things well informed. Guy who doesn't take unneeded risks with mind or body. That's kind of a virtuous thing. Yeah. Right? Yep. I have to be warned against that. Yeah. Because I'm over the side of the boat before I realize I shouldn't be there. Right. Like, these are big waves. I have a problem, like I should not have, it's a little impetuous. Like, I don't think it through because I don't gain, I don't gather information as a way of making decisions. Right. I start down a road and then I go, oh, okay. Adjust. And then I figure out where I'm going. So I make a lot of mistakes in the meantime, and I bump into a lot of stuff, and I make some people unhappy sometimes. And so I admit I don't always make good decisions. So what do I have to do? I have to warn everybody ahead of time, right? I have to give them a preparatory command before I give the execution command, right? Hey guys, let me tell you what's going to happen here. Now let me tell you how it's going to happen to you in cadence. Right? Okay, now we're going to exercise. I've given you all the prep, exactly what's going to happen. And then when we're finally ready, then we'll exercise. Right?
Yeah, I like that. How do you, because kind of where I was going was the, sort of this feeling of not being enough. And then I sort of try to fill that with more knowledge. And then I come back to like, well, like I'm not going to create the perfect.
Does it end up being kind of a paralyzation kind of a thing? Is that kind of what happens,
almost like that, analysis paralysis, right? I think we've talked about that before too, but I think, I think what I realize, that has been helpful is a lot of our conversations about just even though I don't have maybe my mammon mission completely ironed out, we have certainly developed a lot of clarity through our conversations around like some of the higher level missions that really are the foundation. And so just being able to go back to, sort of this mission, because ultimately what I realize is sometimes the thing that I'm chasing isn't really even part of my purpose anyway, right? Like it'll be like, like in terms of like maybe it's comparison or or like I'll see a guy do a really cool thing and I'm like, man, I should do that. And then I realize like all his kids are in college and I still have a 1-year-old, like it's not,
can't do it. Yeah. Does not make sense. Yeah.
But I think being able to ground yourself back in that mission, I think for me it was really helpful just this last week with some of the job transition and some of it was like you get this job and then you're like, there's some self-doubt there. You're sort of like
Sure.
a little bit terrified, and then how do I carry that into my
You can always give it back, right?
family life? Yeah. I
Like,
suppose.
you know what?
Yeah,
Actually, I take it back. I just want to
to
go back to being doing what I was doing before.
Oh, that would be funny.
Yeah. It's like returning a car. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't know, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Right.
You can take a hit.
Yeah. But no, I don't know. I think my other question for you would be just as you're through your journey, as you're thinking about maybe moments of transition with work, like are there any lessons learned or things that maybe you have done to sort of prepare yourself or your family for those times? Because it's you think about like change, right? And sort of like I'm going through a change, my family's going through a little bit of a change, all of that stuff. But I don't know, curious.
So as in a two-phone situation,
yeah,
I know we joke about it, but it's again, language, right? We know what we're talking about when we say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a two-phone situation, you kind of are a little bit, you have traded some security for some liberty.
Right.
Those two things are always, those are competing values, right? A man with full liberty who does whatever he wants when he wants is guaranteed no security. Like, who knows what's going to happen? If I follow no laws and I choose what I want, it's anarchy. Like, who knows, right? So there's always this, these things, the more security you get, the less liberty you're going to get. Right. The more liberty you get, the less security you're guaranteed. So, there's always this tension that has to be done. So, when you start thinking about, okay, I'm in a two-phone world. I've traded a little bit of this, a little bit of autonomy, a little bit of liberty for the security, which is nothing wrong with that. But so in that situation, the other competing thing that you have is my personal mission, maybe, right? And the mission of the company, right? Well, they're the one paying your check. So guess whose mission you should probably default to in that situation.
Yeah.
Depends. Do you want more money from them or not? If you don't want more money from them, then it doesn't matter what you choose.
Right.
If you want their money, then you probably should do what they say. So I was just talking about this to a blade this morning, same guy, and Dredd and I probably depart just a little bit from each other here, and it might just be more semantic than anything. But the framework for me it really is more useful for me when I think of it this way, right? And that is, I think we've talked about the movie theater. Or the movie credits, analogy, right? If the great overarching purpose of mankind is to make the movie, or in this case to love and serve their fellow man, right? What's my name next to?
Oh,
and then, and that is my purpose. Whatever is next to my name is my purpose. Then the missions that I have will be tasks, right? The things that have task and purpose that serve my personal purpose and within the greater purpose. Right. So I break it down.
We haven't talked about that. No, I love it though.
So the way I always, part of that's just because I came from a video and film kind of a world, right? And I always, it's funny, you always look for patterns in your life. My older sister told me I used to see when I was a little kid. I've always watched every movie all the way to the end, every credit until every name has gone by.
Oh, interesting.
I have no idea why. Like when I was little, I don't do it now. Because I'm like, blah, 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 get me out of here. I think the ADD got worse as I was older or something. I don't know. But I used to do that when I was a kid. I would watch them. So I was just fascinated. by all these names. And so I one time I looked and I was like, the longest credits I think at the time I looked, it was like one of the Avengers movies. It was like 17 minutes of just names, rolling by. So if you look at, every man I think has to serve two purposes: the universal purpose, which is to love and serve your fellow man in service of God, right? And then whatever your personal purpose is. So, the guy who is the caterer, or, the assistant to Mr. De Niro's hairdresser, whatever the the thing is, right? Whatever your name is next to is your personal purpose. So my name shows up next to exhorting and equipping men to overcome self-limiting beliefs in order to unlock their personal purpose and become maximally effective in their areas of influence, right? So my name is next to that. That's my job. Now within that purpose there's lots of things. So the assistant to Mr. De Niro's hairdresser probably has lots of missions that must be accomplished on any given day for any given scene, whatever. So those things change and mold and morph over time, right? So this unlocking men, you're right, and helping them overcome self-limiting beliefs, that's going to be there no matter what. I do it for my kids. I do it for F3 guys. I do it for whoever I come in contact with, no matter what. I can't not do it, right? That's the thing I can't not do. So within that, then, my mission when my oldest, who's now about to turn 22, right, about to graduate college, right, is married, is looking to have kids, right? My mission with regard to her serves this purpose of helping her to overcome her self-limiting beliefs. But the things that I do, the tasks that I perform, the mission that I'm on to get that done, very different from when she was 12.
Yep.
Right? Extremely different. Now that I'm a one phone man living in a two phone world, right? My mission there with regard to my mammon, incredibly different. But it always serves the same purpose.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that's a good, sort of follow up, because we at one point we talked about we were kind of like purpose and mission, we using those interchangeably, but then maybe had another word of like assignment or something. But I think the movie credit gives a really nice visual to that. I think it
helped me to kind of, and now again, I know that Dredd would probably differ a little bit on the way he would say it, because he would say a mission has a task and a purpose, and the purpose may be the greater, and he has a little bit probably, but I think we're all ending up saying basically the same stuff. Yeah. When it comes down to it, it's just helpful for me to look at it that way. As a non-military guy, it helped to point it up.
No, I love it. I think it's.
I don't remember why we brought that up, but.
No, I think it's super, super important. I mean, all things point back to mission, right? Or your
largely
purpose, like at some point, because even when we're talking about, how we apply, like, and maybe that's why some of these things are so easy to apply in F3, because the mission is clear, right? It's really clear. And
the tasks are simple,
right? Yep. And
non-complicated.
You start bringing those home. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I forget where this was at on, I think a previous podcast, maybe you and Dredd did a long time ago, but I remember some conversation around almost like dopamine, right? And sort of like the reason, you get all this feedback, right? From work, right? Every time I get an email or a Teams chat or whatever, right? It's sort of like this instant feedback of like how I'm doing, and it's kind of like the performance appraisal thing we've talked about. It's like, my wife has yet to sit down with me and review my performance,
honey, this year I think your meets expectations. Yeah. Maybe next year we'll get an exceeds out of you, but
yeah. And my kids, right? But there are some of those subtle, like when I am working in the office and I come home and my kids are like, Dad, and they come running to me. Those are moments where you're like, okay,
performance review.
Right.
That's it right
so
there. Right?
I do think, but without the purpose or the mission defined, it's sort of like, okay, well, what am I aligning my vision to? It's kind of hard to persuade somebody to do something that that is unclear.
And I think that's the most difficult part. Dredd talks about it. His superpower is consistency. And guys, that is the toughest one. We've talked about on this podcast the fact that it's the backbone for all the other virtues. It's a nervous system for all the other virtues, the consistency to stick with it. And that's, to me, that's part of one of the biggest problems. Guys hear me talk about this stuff, or they talk about like, you don't really sit down and vape with your kids, right? I mean, come on, like you don't really, like you say it in principle, you don't really do it. And I'm like, you ask them.
Yeah.
You don't have to ask me. You don't have to believe me. Go ask my girls.
Mm-hmm.
They won't use that language per se because,
you don't sit down and tell them, yeah,
honey, I'm about to lay some vision on you, and let me articulate this clearly so that I can persuade you to come alongside me, and I'll exhort you through the obstacles. Yeah, I'm probably not. But I promise you, if you ask them questions that led to whether or not those were things that we did, yeah, absolutely. Right. And one of the things I was going to say earlier was, as we looked around and we were like, okay, well, ultimately at the end of the day, it's her room, it's her stuff, it's whatever. My wife and I don't have mutually shared values on organizational cleanliness.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And at some point I had to simply accept and say, this is a thing that is not missional. And therefore I will let it go.
Yeah.
If I can get it, great. If I want it that bad, do it myself. Right. But it's not something that I can force to happen because of I'm the dad and it's going to be clean when I get home. God, bang it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
My dad I remember this clearly, in the basement of our home when I was real little, we had wooden shelves, right? We had Star Wars toys and some of those big play sets, like the place where Yoda lived and, the Death Star and all this kind of stuff, right? You had all these play sets. And there were crayon lines drawn. They were placed and a crayon line was drawn around each one. And everything at the end of every day must be placed exactly where it was in the crayon line, labeled, and all this kind of stuff. That was the deal. So as you might imagine, certain things hung on in there, right?
Yeah.
My wife came from a family of 8 kids, did not have that, that was not a thing. And so these shared virtues exist. So I had to say, is this missional? Does this matter? And when I think of, when my wife and I talk about the shared mission we have for our kids, is a clean room missional? No.
Right.
Maybe it is in some families. In ours, no. We decided that is not a shared virtue. That is not a missional thing that we need to worry about.
Right.
We want her to be able to make those decisions and understand why those things might be important, and then make those, teach her the correct principles and allow her to govern herself. Yeah. That's what's important.
Yeah. It's not one of the essentials, right?
Right. But the absolutely, and I use these words on purpose because that is how I feel about it sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes, maybe a lot, right? The horrifying and painful consistency with which you must act with regard to your kids makes F3 workouts look like Candyland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can screw up an F3 workout. In fact, I do. Sometimes I don't give the commands correctly, but guys kind of know what I mean. Right. And we'll get it done. We'll figure it out. In Metro, Dredd has started this deal. Somebody handed me the cue a couple weeks ago when I was up there, and I messed up a command, and Dredd wouldn't move.
He talked about that.
I did not give him the proper command. Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. Yeah, I guess maybe we did. Yeah. But, and so eventually I had to just be like, look, if you don't want to work out, you don't have to work out. I don't really care. I'm just going to do it how I'm doing it, whatever. Right. And, but I'll try, so we get there. But my point in saying that is, that's a place where, you get it right, you get it wrong, figure it out. Right. But the risk is super low. If the workout doesn't go well, what happens? I just try again later. I can't be like, well, I screwed up the oldest one, throw her out, let's make a new one. So it's critical. So that painful and horrifying consistency is critical.
Yep.
You cannot, you have to be lockstep with your wife, and you've got to be, you really have to try really hard not to deviate. It's tough.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. It just, I've got a buddy of mine that writes on his mirror the number of days till his oldest child is 18 or whatever, when they're out of the house. So it's sort of like this reminder, but we talked about this before, but like some of the F3 content was written sort of from the perspective of a high impact man who had already sort of accelerated, right? And so but it makes so much sense, right? Like F3 is the training ground, right? The workouts and all of that stuff is like the practice, to like teach us how to apply these things at home. But so many times it happens so fast. You trade your passion for glory, and I just don't lose your grip on the dreams of the past. You must fight just to keep them alive.
I know, so because otherwise, you'll lose.
What's that?
You'll lose the eye of the tiger, baby.
Yeah, that's right. Not Geddy Lee.
Not Geddy Lee. Yeah.
No, this is so good because I think, F3 has been, I was brought into F3 because of the Concentrica, right? And so like just knowing that model exists, right? And that work-life balance is a myth. I've sort of, the last 7 years have with every job change or everything that when work sort of tries to creep in on those other relationships, I've used that model, but it's sort of like, what else? How do I apply all the other things? Because the reality is our kids they're going to grow up, right? And be, someday I'll be in your shoes, and so, there's no better time than now to start applying some of these other things. So we'll see. I'm going to cast some vision. It's Halloween, so I'm going to cast some vision that there is a dad.
All Reese cups need to end up in dad's bin. There
is a dad tax on Halloween candy.
The vision I have for you, son, is to bring me your Kit Kats. That is
I appreciate you, man. This is great.
Edge of the blade, it's calling me sharp. Stone on steel in the darkest spots. Warning weather, still it cries. Whetstone whispers through my mind. Spin that stone